jungle camps. To steal or not to steal? This is the question. So I wanted to go over this for a couple of reasons. The first is that I've seen in games some problems that arise through people taking their team's camps that they're probably not aware of. And secondly, that I see a lot of videos, coaching and stuff that strongly advise their clients on taking the camps, and they don't really talk about when they should or shouldn't. They just take them, get all the gold, etc. So first things, let's just go over the basics of the values of these things, because I think probably if you don't have that much experience in the game, you won't know it. I mean, even I, who have played quite a lot of jungle in previous seasons, I mean, it's always changing through patches, but I mean, I don't really think about the exact values of things much. So let's have a look here. What are the gold values? So here we go. So we can see that all of the jungle camps are actually worth less gold than a single minion wave. Single minion wave being 105 gold. And only the golems are worth more than that. And if there's a cannon in the wave, then they're worth less than a single minion wave. So thinking about taking jungle camps, you should never ever ever do it if you would miss a minion wave, because they're worth quite a bit more. So then secondly, there's the times. So minion wave is every 30 seconds, whereas these jungle camps are 2 minutes on the small, 5 minutes on the big, so obviously gold over time is quite low for these camps compared to the lane. And the way that the game is currently balanced is that about 10 minutes in the jungle is roughly equal to 10 minutes in the lane. So if we look at that, 10 minutes in lane, if we just go with the base cannon value of 50, which is slightly incorrect because the value will have gone up over 10 minutes, but if we just use that base value, it's 2,405 for 10 minutes of lane minions, 2,433 if you clear the jungle the maximum number of times you can in 10 minutes, so 2 times for the big camps and 5 times for the small camps, then you will get these amounts of gold, except that the lane will be slightly more than this. But anyway, that's the balance. They're roughly the same over a 10-minute period. And a full jungle clear is 601 if we discount the river crabs, because you can't guarantee that you'll get those, and their value does increase, but the guaranteed income is pretty much just the 6 jungle camps, which is 601 gold. So you can see that the value of an individual camp is not really that high. I don't actually think that the gold values are that relevant. It's more about the amount of experience they give. So let's look at that. So if we look at the experience values, then we can see here that a single lane wave is worth more than any jungle camp, and if there's a cannon, then it's even more so. So raptors, red, and golems, these are the XP values currently. They change as the game goes on though, so these are the initial values that get larger as time goes on based on the level of the camp. And here's your lane values. But because of how jungling works currently with the red and blue smite items, these are the values your jungler would get instead. So you get 85 if you took raptors, they would get 212 experience, 275 from the red, whereas you then get 110, and the golems, they get 382, whereas you get 153. And again, these values increase as time goes on. So if we consider you taking, say you take the whole topside jungle, then you're going to get 348 experience. Whereas if your jungler takes it, they will get 869 experience. which, if you think about it, is 485 experience that you actually deny your team. Because if you take those camps, this is the amount of experience that is lost that your team just can't get that game because you took the camps instead of your jungler. Which is, I think, an important consideration when telling somebody that they should take camps if they're not the jungler. One of the things that I've seen in a lot of games is, your team may lose a couple of tier 1 towers and the laners no longer feel safe pushing up and farming their lane, so they'll instead start taking jungle camps on either side of their lane. What this does, especially when you're behind, is actually starts putting your team further behind because you're costing your team experience. So you're going to get behind in levels compared to your opponents. And, they're also probably, you're going to have some amount of contested camps once your tier 1 goes down. Your opponents should start trying to contest some of these also. So your jungler's resources are going to be dwindling. And the other thing to think about that you may not be aware of if you don't jungle yourself is that your jungler is also limited in the amount of experience and gold they can get from laning. So if they start getting too much, then they start getting diminishing returns on the amount of gold and experience they get. So basically, you should always be farming your lane minions as the highest priority. They give you the most experience, they give you the most gold. Taking jungle camps is something that we need to think more carefully about. Let's just come up with a quick checklist to decide whether we should take a camp or not. The first thing to ask is, will your jungler not clear the camp in the next 1 minute? So I say this because the camps obviously don't respawn until they've been cleared, and the level that they spawn as is fixed. It doesn't change until they've been cleared and can respawn. So if your jungler won't get to the camp before it respawns, if you would clear it, then you're actually going to benefit your team by clearing it, because when they do arrive to clear it, it will have respawned at a higher level than it was, and it will be worth more to them than if you had just left it there. So that's the one case where you're actually helping your jungler by clearing their camp, because you'll respawn at a higher level for them. And yeah, basically, if they're in the bottom lane doing stuff, or they've just started clearing wolves and are heading down that way, and you're a top laner, then you're absolutely safe to take these golems. There's almost no chance they're going to get up there within the next 1 minute and 30 seconds, right? So by the time they get back there, if you've cleared them, then they'll probably be just respawning by the time they get up there, and you've actually done them a favour. So, next question to ask is, okay, your jungler will get there before a minute and a half, but is there a high risk the enemy's going to take the camp before they get there? So, if you've lost your tier 1 in the top lane, there's probably a high probability that the enemy top lane is trying to take this camp. So, if that's a high likelihood, then it's better to deny the enemy the experience than to let them get it, obviously. So in that case, you should definitely deny it to them. Even though, you're denying it to your jungler, they're going to lose it anyway, so you should take it. And then 3, is your jungler ahead enough? So in the case that your jungler is quite well fed, they could be, several levels up, well, not several, but like 2 or 3 levels up on you, then we can say, well, maybe they can afford for us to take their camps, right? So in that case, you're probably more useful to your team if you can catch up on some golden experience. If you're that far behind and your jungler's ahead, that then starts making sense to, even though the total experience is going to be less than if your jungler took it, there's some other mechanics that happen with the jungler where if they're behind in levels, they get bonus experience and stuff. So if they're ahead, then they're not actually, the cost isn't the same, right? If they're ahead, then the bonus experience isn't going to be the same as if they were not the highest level, but it's usually not likely that your jungler is going to be the highest level on your team, so, they'd have to be pretty fed for you to be like, okay, they're far enough ahead that I'm just going to start taking their camps because it's more important for me to catch up than for them to get the most value out of the camps. But that can happen, so it's worth keeping that in mind. Obviously, it's always worth taking enemy camps if you can. Doesn't matter who takes them as long as you deny them to your opponents. And I think this is probably the 3 most important rules to follow when thinking about whether you take your team's camps or not. Because always prioritize lane minions if you can. Get the most resources out of them. Only take jungle if it'll either be that they are not going to clear it in the next minute and a half, or these other reasons. So I think that it's good to think about that rather than just mindlessly taking camps, because you can easily start to snowball a experience deficit. So, if your team is behind on levels of your opponents and you've lost some of your tier 1 towers and are starting to die resources, as soon as, 2 of your laners start taking jungle camps on the spawn, then you're actually denying your team quite a bit of experience that if the jungler was able to secure those camps, you would get instead. And you're just going to end up at the point where your jungler has been denied so much experience and gold that they're going to become useless, or a lot less useful than they would have been. And this is something I actually see quite a bit in these low elo games where the jungler just gets starved for experience, and the laners aren't really cognizant of the fact that they're costing their team quite large amounts of experience by farming these camps instead of just prioritizing on their lane. It's okay if you have to wait at your tower for 15 seconds for the wave to come up. If your jungler is going to be able to get these camps, you shouldn't just run over and take them, in my opinion. Just wait your 15 seconds and collect the minions instead. And that will actually benefit your team a lot more than the behaviours that most people seem to engage in and are even encouraged, it seems, by a lot of coaches. And because, the gold values are not that high and the experience values are quite low compared to what your jungler would get. So just think about that, and hopefully with making those decisions you'll be able to know when it's a good idea to take the camps, and you'll be able to win more games by doing that and not starving your jungler out. So good luck and happy climbing.